योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचाम् मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिम् गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुर् गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः हरिः ओम्. So last time we looked at Sutra 3.15, which is again one of the sutras where we are still looking at pariṇāmas. Last time we saw kramānyatvam pariṇāmānyatve hetuhu. Then we looked in detail at Vyasa's bhashya. As mentioned last time, with that sutra, the series of sutras related to the Siddhanta of pariṇāmas, specifically for the chitta, but more generally for the entire creation, in terms of the bhutas and the indriyas, has been discussed. So dharma pariṇāma, lakshana pariṇāma, avastha pariṇāma, and looking at them as a single pariṇāma with respect to the dharmi, etc., has all been discussed. Now, with the next sutra that we will see, we start looking at the various siddhis arising from the sanyama. Sanyama meaning, as we have seen where it said trayam ekatra sanyamaha, the dharana, dhyana, samadhi together is referred to as sanyama. And then sanyama on various things, how they lead to different siddhis, and which also is the reason why this particular chapter is known as Vibhuti Pada, because the various vibhutis arising from yoga are described here. Now often it is said that okay, this is all about magic and yoga and so on. So this part of the text is often not dealt with in too much detail or with too much attention. So sometimes one wonders also why this has been listed, why Patanjali devoted to so much space in the text to cover these vibhutis. So the answer to that is given by Vyasa's introductory line to the upcoming Sutra 3.16, where Vyasa says, Ato yogina upatta sarva sadhanasya śabdārthapratyayānāmitaretarādhyāsāt sañyamasya vishaya upakṣipyate. So this line is actually very key to understand why the vibhutis have been listed. So he says, Ato yoginaha upatta sarva sadhanasya. So the yogi who has accomplished all the sadhanas, in sadhana pada we started with the various sadhanas, and specifically the ashtanga yoga as a yama niyama asana pranayama etc. are sadhanani. So similarly sadhana pada also covered tapasvadhyaya, ishvara pranidhanani, kriya yoga etc. So all of them are means. Sadhanam means. So upatta sarva sadhanasya yoginaha, of that yogi who has accomplished or has obtained all the sadhanas or all the means necessary for yoga. Now what about that yogi? Bubhutsita artha pratipattaye. Now bubhutsa is one of the sananta pratyaya terms which we have discussed earlier. I think it's in English it's called desiderative terms, where the suffix san, when applied to a certain dhatu root, a verb root, you get a form of it where the desire for that is expressed. So bodhum ichha bubutsa, the desire to know the desire to understand. Bodhum ichha. So the verb root is buddha, and bubutsita, bubutsa is the ichha, the wish to know, the desire to know, or desire to understand. Now, bubutsita artha pratipattaye. Bubutsita artha is something that the yogi wishes to know. There is a desire to know. For a yogi who attains all the sadhans, all the means of yoga, there is a natural inclination to understand things, understand reality. And again, as we have discussed, often in Bhagavad Gita and everywhere you will see that Krishna says Jnana Vijnana Sahitam. So Jnana usually refers to knowing the nature of the Purusha or knowing the nature of the Ishvara. But then there is also a Vijnana where several other things which operate in this creation as sheaths of that Purusha. Understanding that is also important. And that is why Ishavasya Upanishad spends quite some time saying that you have to pursue both understanding aspects of the creation and the Prakriti, as well as understanding the aspects of the metaphysical Purusha. And both of them are equally important. And in fact, it says if you pursue only one of those, then there is a fall. And in fact, there is a greater fall as per the Ishavasya Upanishad if there is only the pursuit of understanding the nature of Purusha without following the karmas and everything else that is prescribed in the sort of in the worldly plane by the Vedas. And therefore both have to be known. And now the yogi who are of the nature of Upatta Sarva Sadhanaha Yogi, that yogi who has attained or obtained all the means, there is a natural inclination to know. So, when the yogi has that natural inclination to know, now what is the Sanyama required to know different things? Bubutsita artha pratipattaye sanyamasya vishaya. So now those vishayas, those things that the yogi wishes to know, can only be known through certain sanyama, through the dharana, dhyana, samadhi process. And now starting from this sutra till the end of the chapter, he says, Vyasa says, Bubutsita artha pratipattaye sanyamasya vishaya upakshipyate. Now Patanjali will sort of lay out the various sanyamas for the yogi to know various things. And that is the key aspect of why almost an entire chapter, or a large part, a substantial part of an entire chapter has been devoted by Patanjali to bring out the vibhutis, which often are not dealt with sufficiently. And it says, okay, this is magic, this is supernatural powers of a yogi, and so on. However, Patanjali is being specific here. He's saying a yogi who has attained all these means, there is bound to be a desire to know certain things, and the yogic process, the yoga technology, etc., there is a specific means to attain different types of jnana vijnana, and there is sayama on different aspects that is required. And Patanjali is systematizing that to say what sayama will lead to what kind of knowledge. So this preamble to the upcoming sutra, even though it is very brief, it is very insightful, and therefore we need to understand that. In another Sankhya text, which is the name is Tattvayathatyadipanam. It is a commentary on the Tattva Samasa Sutra. That text has beautifully divided the samadhis into three. There is a Jnana Samadhi, Bhakti Samadhi, and then it says Yoga Samadhi or a Dhyana Samadhi, where it lists that Jnana Samadhi and Bhakti. Jnana is about Purusha and Ishvara, or specifically about the Purusha, the metaphysical nature of the Purusha or the metaphysical nature of the Ishvara. Bhakti is the devotion to the Lord, and Samadhi giving a glimpse of the Lord. But there is another category of Samadhis, which are specifically the one listed here, which is referred to as Dhyana or Yoga, where different aspects of knowledge arise. And that is what is laid out in these Yoga Sutras. Sanyama and so will lead to knowledge and so and so. Okay, or a certain vibhuti of so and so. So that is what will begin with this particular sutra.
So it's an enunciation to upcoming sutra. It is here that we get the clue that yoga is process of jnana. Like Viveka Khyati, we know it is ultimate jnana. Yoga is a path of jnana. Jnana, vijnana, precisely. So it's a knowledge process and not just process of experience. Because our popular mind, it is taken that yoga is experience of some place, out of the world, up to the world place, etc. And so that's why yoga is considered to be or understood to be experiential subject, that what is to be experienced is one state of wellness. And so yoga is understood to be experiential subject by layman. But yoga is jnana marga actually. Ashtanga yoga also, the sutra will tell us. Yoganganusthanat ashuddhikshe jnana deepti aviveka khyate. So it is, one thing is, yoga is a purificatory process, that is Ashtanga yoga, and other aspect is jnana. Jnana to culminative phase of viveka khyati. That's the acme of knowledge, pinnacle point of knowledge. The point is, yoga is a knowledge process. And of course, quite prominently, predominantly, metaphysical knowledge process. Because for physical realm of knowledge, we have our empirical process and sensory process. And we get the knowledge by the psychosensory system that we have. But metaphysical knowledge doesn't come by psychosensory system. So, therefore he says, as you heard just now in the final statement, which is enunciation next sutra, bubutsitārthe pratipattaye. Pratipatti of bubutsitārtha. And you heard the meaning of the bubutsa. So the knowledge process, like ultimate knowledge is viveka khyati, sattva purusha anyata khyati. It implies knowledge of sattva. What is sattva? What are the various manifestations of sattva? Because that is prakriti and it manifests severally. And then on the other hand, it is purusha. The purusha doesn't have all those various states and various manifestations. While prakriti has all the various manifestations. So sattva purusha anyata khyati, the discriminate doesn't implies that one yogi should be knowing the whole sattva aspect, the drushya aspect on one hand, and drashta aspect on the other hand, and then the distinction of the two. So the point is, yoga is a knowledge process. And yogi will have jignasa until the pinnacle point of knowledge is viveka khyati. There are several things to be known before the pinnacle point is known. Pinnacle point is sattva purusha anyata khyati or viveka khyati. So yogi has jignasa, as you heard the word, the Vyasa's commentary, bubutsita artha. That is jignasa. Yogi has jignasa for what prakriti might be, how prakriti is manifesting in several forms. So there is a lot of inquisitiveness for jnana in the realm of metaphysics. And therefore, to quench that thirst of yogi, the only way is samyama. There is no way that knowledge can come by thought process and empirical process, intellectual process, logical process, etc. There is no way that we can get that knowledge. So that is the realm of knowledge which is only monopoly of intuitive mysticism, that is dharana, dhyan, samadhi. And this knowledge is exclusive for this particular process of samyama. It is not available to other processes of extrapolations, inferences, etc., etc., based on empirical faculties. And so what we have to take clue here, that yoga is a knowledge process. Jnana Vijnana, the knowledge in the realm of Jnana and knowledge in the realm of Vijnana. You heard that Jnana is Atma Jnana, Adhyatma Jnana, Purusha Jnana, Ishvara Jnana, metaphysical entities of the sentient principle. And Vijnana is all allied aspects which are also important. Ishavasyopanishad we heard about Sambhuti, Asambhuti, etc. So in Adhyatmic process, nothing is overlooked. Something by being worldly, it is not overlooked. That is called Prapancha and Paramartha. It's a combination of Prapancha and Paramartha. The Ishavasyopanishad has wonderfully laid out the scheme for such things. The Adhyatmic process, where, and Bhagavad Gita also often mentions about Jnana Vijnana Sahitam. So Vijnanam also is necessary, Jnana is also necessary. And here, in order to have knowledge in the realm of Vijnanam, which is not attainable by empirical process or the intellectual process, temporal process, the samyama is only the means, and therefore the samyamas are being mentioned. And the first of the samyama is commenced hereafter. Okay.
So this aspect of the alaukika pratyaksha, or sort of supernatural direct vision and realization, we have seen it in the first chapter also, when we talked about nirvichara samapatti, etc. And all the schools, even if now yoga darshan is one of the darshanas and there are other competing darshanas, so to speak, all the schools recognize, even the non-orthodox schools recognize the yogic process to arrive at knowledge which is not available through the normal worldly means. So then with that background, let us begin with Sutra 3.16, which is a sutra with a small bhashya. So the sutra is pariṇāmatrayasaṃyamād atītānāgatajñānam. So through Sayyama on the Pariṇāmatrayam, the three Parinamas which we have just seen, what jnana arises, what knowledge arises? Knowledge of Atita and Anagata. Atita means what has already happened. Anagata means what is yet to come. All of that knowledge, the yogi obtains it or realizes it. So that is the meaning of the sutra itself. And the bhashya is a small bhashya on this. Vyasa elaborates. He says, Dharma lakshanavastha parinameshu sayyamād yoginam bhavati atita anagata jnanam. So he elaborates the same thing as said in the sutra, that for the yogis, if they perform sayyama or they obtain sayyama on the dharma lakshana and avastha parinamas, which we have discussed in detail, when they do that, for them there is knowledge of atita and anagata, what has happened and what is yet to happen. Then again, Vyasa reminds us, he says, Dharana dhyana samadhitrayam ekatra sayyama uktaha. It has already been said, says Vyasa, the dharana dhyana samadhi, three together, are referred to as sayyama. Tena parinamatrayam sakshat kriyamanam atita anagata jnanam teshu sampadayati. So by that, when the Parināmatrayam, the three Parinamas, or the triad of Parinamas, Sakshat Kriyamanam, making it directly perceived through yogic means. Sakshat Kriyamanam, then what happens? Atita Anagata Jnanam Teshu Sampadayati. He obtains the Atita Anagata Jnanam in them. But when he does Sanyama in them, he obtains atītānāgatajñānam, jnanam of what has happened and what is yet to happen. So basically, all of the past, present, future, that knowledge is available to the yogi by the Sanyama on the pariṇāmatrayam. Now here we have to see how interesting it is, because normally when we say that, oh, there is meditation, there is dhyana, there is samadhi, examples are taken of, okay, meditate on your Ishtadevata, the deity, or on your inner self, or that some people would say, okay, the lotus, or some object like ghataha, the pot, etc. But here, look at what is the topic for Sanyama. The topic is pariṇāmatraya. Now, to even have that topic, look at the level of education that is required by the yogi, how the Shastras, where the pariṇāmatraya covered the three types of parinama, the dharma concept, which is so much deep into Nyaya Shastra, Vaisheshika Shastra, etc., has to be understood in detail. For that, even to become a topic, just to know or talk about, and Sanyama on that takes it to an entirely different level. And therefore, often when we say, okay, meditate, we will take some particular object, like, okay, image of a deity, a yantra, or a chakra, and so on. Whereas here, the topic is an abstract one. It is a certain siddhanta on which the Sanyama has been referred to. So when we read and study the text, we have to notice that the nature of discussion happening here, which is so different and at such a higher level than what is normally done in general discussion on, say, yoga, meditation, etc. Anyway, so this is about 3.16 and its bhashya.
So, atītānāgatajñānam has been mentioned by pariṇāmatrayasaṃyamād. Now, the logical question would come from an inquisitive mind, why not Vartaman also? Because we know there are kalatrayas, Atita, Anagata, Vartamana. So, Vartamana Jnana comes by empirical process. But we do not have the sakshatkrita knowledge of latent phases of a thing or potential phases of that same thing. Now that is something which is alaukika pratyaksham can give. Today perhaps we can infer. If you have seen a rose, we can infer that it was in budded condition. So we infer now the budded condition of a blossomed flower, and we know and we can infer what will happen to fully bloomed flower after a while, that it will dry out. So we can infer as to what will happen futuristically. Anagatataha, what will happen. We can infer. Atitataha, what was, we can infer. So we can only have inference of it. But here, yogi will be needing sakshatkrita jnanam. And therefore, by dharma lakshana avastha parinama, any samyama on the pariṇāmatraya, yogi is going to reveal atita avastha of the thing and anagata avastha of that thing. Yet to come states, for instance, the pot. We know the pot, we can infer when the pot is today functioning, the pot will become old, pot will become rotten, pot will break, there will be chips, and then it will become again dust particle. It will become dust. So this is our inference. We cannot have direct perception of it. That's alaukika vishaya. It's not a laukika vishaya. And also we can infer how the pot was. Before it became a pot, it was a raw pot. Before the raw pot, it was a lump of clay. Before lump of clay, it was sand and water mixed. And before that, it was just a sand. So this is our inference. We can only infer. But in alaukika realm, the yogi will actually have the sakshatkara, which is a unique aspect of alaukika pratyaksham of a yogi, which happens by samyama. So yogi will be seeing all that latent phases of a thing at sight and potential phases of the thing. So yogi will know that ultimately this is going to become avyakta, and then even a pot came from avyakta. So this will be sakshat kruta jnanam, which is unique aspect, alaukika pratyaksham. We can never get it, and yogi gets it. So understand the grade of knowledge that yogi would be able to get by pariṇāmatrayasaṃyamād. And yogi, in his knowledge process, needs to have this alaukika jnanam, so that the penultimate or the pinnacle point of knowledge can be reached. And that's why this is the first of the samyama. After having described pariṇāmatraya, dharma lakshana avastha parināmād, the samyama on it. And in order to postulate that they all exist, the potential pot has existence, latent pot has existence in some form or the other. Lot of metaphysical argumentation took place during the delineation of earlier sutras, parināma, the dharma lakshana avastha parināma vyakyātāha, shantodita vyapadesha dharmanupati dharmi kramanyattam parināma anyatve hetuhu. So in these three sutras, there are long commentaries of Vyasa to postulate that these are realities. Because there are philosophies who refuted, who did not accept as realities. So Vyasa carried out that duty of his in earlier sutras by providing extensive commentaries on the three sutras, and therefore now it's very brief commentary here, because atītānāgatajñānam, anāgatavastha are realities. Like a logical positivist might argue that they are not existing, but they do exist, and that's why the whole metaphysics was discussed in the three sutras by Vyasa, and therefore he briefly comments here on pariṇāmatrayasaṃyamād, and only atītānāgata, which is alaukika aspect, that becomes available, and yogi gets sakshatkar, and not just jnanam, not just knowledge, but sakshatkar, intuitive mystic revelation of atītāvastha and anāgatavastha. Therefore, the whole spectrum of pastistic realm and futuristic realm is had by the yogi. That is by samyama. Okay.
Okay. So now we move on to the next sutra, 3.17. Now the beauty of some of these sutras that will follow, on one hand, they are recommending certain sanyamas to gain certain knowledge or power. I mean, power is a strange word, but a supernatural ability, so on, or a supernatural knowledge through alaukika pratyaksha. At the same time, because these sutras have come in this manner, Patanjali and Vyasa are also teaching us a lot of the different siddhantic aspects. Just like the pariṇāmatrayam, in a way, it is a siddhantic aspect to teach us about the dharma, dharmi, bhava, the different type of parināmas, etc. So the next sutra is of a similar type. A certain sayyama is recommended. Sayyama on a certain thing is recommended to attain a certain type of knowledge and ability. And in that, the sutra and the bhashya, a lot of the siddhanta will all, different aspect of the siddhanta will be explained to us. So the sutra is 3.17. It says, śabdārthapratyayānāmitaretarādhyāsāt saṅkarah tat pravibhāgasaṃyamād sarvabhūtaritañānam. So that is the sutra. śabdārthapratyayānāmitaretarādhyāsāt saṅkarah tat pravibhaga sanyamad sarvabhuta ritagñānam. So, śabdārthapratyayānām itaretarādhyāsāt. So the Shabda means let us just call it the word. Okay, so something in the world of language which is meaningful. So let's say a word or a sentence. So that is Shabda. Artha is the thing that word or sentence, that Shabda refers to, which normally we'll say meaning, but here it is when we say meaning. For example, if I say cow, that is the word. The thing referred to is the actual animal, which has the horn, the tail, the dewlap, the sasnadimat gohu. So the dewlap hanging down the neck portion. So the actual walking animal, that is the artha. Pratyaya is the jnanam. It is that thing, that cognitive imprint on the chitta, which is the nature of the knowledge of that thing. So the knowledge of the cow, or the cognitive imprint of the cow, either as a collective or an individual, depending on the context. So which is referred to as jati or vyakti. In any case, the pratyaya is the thing that resides in the chitta. It is the knowledge, the cognitive imprint. The artha is the thing that resides in the world. It is the cows either in the collective or individual that are walking about. And then there is the Shabda, the unit of language, that imparts a meaning. Now, śabdārthapratyayānām, of all of these three, itaretarādhyāsāt. Itaretarādhyāsāt. So what is adhyasa? Adhyasa means anyonyaropaha. Anyonya aropaha. Which means one is imposed upon the other. One is superimposed on the other. So the Shabda, Artha and the Pratyaya, the three, gets superimposed on each other. So when we say cow, there is the word, the imprint in the mind, and the actual thing walking in the world. All these three are taken as one because one is superimposed on the other. So itaretara means mutually. That is anyonya. So itaretara adhyasat. Because of this mutual superimposition, what happens? Sankaraha. Now what is Sankaraha? Sankaraha is sort of mixing, or Sankaraha is sort of confusion. So the meaning there is bhinnānām api buddhyekarūpata sampādanāt sankīrṇatvam. That is Sankaraha. Bhinnānām api. So the things that are different, completely different. However, buddhyekarūpata. In the buddhi they are taken as one. They have the same rupa in the buddhi. So that they come about as one in the buddhi. They are different. So bhinnānām api buddhyekarūpata sampādanāt. When that happens, so when things that are completely different still have the same form in the buddhi, when that happens, it is known as sankīrṇatvam or Sankaraha. So that's a beautiful definition of what is this confusion, of what is the Sankaraha referred to here. So śabdārthapratyayānām itaretarādhyāsāt Sankaraha. So then what? Tat pravibhaga sanyamāt. So now, if one does the sanyama, which is the dharana, dhyana, samadhi, on tat pravibhagaha, tesham pravibhagaha, differentiating those three aspects, and then having a sanyama on that differentiation. When that sanyama happens, then sarva bhuta ritagñānam. Then what jnanam arises? What alaukika jnanam gets realized by the yogi? It is the sarva bhuta ritagñānam. So sarva bhuta means all kinds of creatures, birds, animals, etc. Then their language, so to speak. Rita means Shabda, Rita Shabde. Rita means their language, the way they communicate. Complete knowledge of that comes to the yogi. Sarva Bhuta Rita Jnanam is Sarvani Chatani Bhutani, that is Sarva Bhutani, Sarva Jivaha, which are Pashu, Pakshi, etc., birds, etc. Now their language, Tesham Rutani Shabdaha. So the way they make sounds and communicate, that is their ritam. Tesham Jnanam, understanding of that happens to the yogi. So once the yogi does Sanyama on this, he is able to understand all the creatures of creation. And in the yogic context, it is also Deva, Gandharva, Asura, etc. And Pashu, Pakshi, the Stavara, Jangama. So all the types of creation, whether it is crawling, creeping, walking, flying, all types of creation, their language, so to speak, is completely realized by the yogi. When the yogi obtains a Sanyama or attains a Sanyama on the pravibhaga, the clear differentiation between Shabda, Artha and Pratyaya. So śabdārthapratyayānām itaretarādhyāsāt sankaraha, because there is a mutual superimposition, completely different things get the same akara, same form in the buddhi. So that is sankara, that is the confusion. Like it was said, Bhinnānām api buddhyeka rūpatā sampadānāt sankirnatvam. So that sankara happens. So that confusion that happens, the yogi realizes that, then he sees the differentiation. On the differentiation there is a Sanyama, and moment there is that Sanyama, then the yogi gets to know as the supernatural realization of the language of all creatures. So the various languages of humanity and the languages of all creatures, there is a direct perception and realization by the yogi. That is the meaning of the Sutra 3.17, and there is a long bhashya to follow.
So this is the siddhi called Sarva Bhuta Rita Jnanam. So that is Sarva Bhuta, all animals, creatures, etc. Their language is sound forms. They make sounds. So from their sounds, they have their communications. So yogi is able to understand what is it that they are communicating. So what is their communication? That is Sarva Bhuta Rita Jnanam. The yogi is able to have this knowledge of all animals, even birds, animals, creatures, insects, birds, etc., etc. So how does this come about? Sarva Bhuta Rita Jnanam. This is the siddhi. How does this come about? Śabdārthapratyayānām itaretarādhyāsāt sankaraha tat pravibhaga samyamam. So śabdārthapratyaya, what are these three aspects? And you should recall that we had discussed this while we are dealing with Savitarka Samapatti, where the sutra was śabdārtha jnana vikalpaihi sankirna. And here śabdārthapratyayānām itaretarādhyāsāt sankaraha. So Shabda Artha Jnanam. So you heard about the example of cow. And if you recall, during that time I had explained this. If I utter word cow and ask you a question, what did I say? Your answer is cow. If I show you a cattle grazing, and if I ask you a question, what is that? Again you say it is cow. And if I ask you by looking at the cow, about hearing about the cow, what is in your mind? What is going on in your mind? What is the context in your mind? Again you reply, it is cow. So in all the three places, your answer is cow, while the three questions were separate questions. So there are these three kinds of cows. One is Shabdatmaka, the other one is Arthatmaka, and then Pratyayatmaka. So Shabdatmaka cow is word composed of some letters, consonants and vowels coming together, and then it is bhadi parināma. It is sound effect. I have to utter the word cow. So there is phonics and phonetics. So it's phonics there. And by phonics you are comprehending what I said. While in case of that grazing animal, it is actual animal. As just now you heard about characteristics of it, dwalap, etc. The studs, etc., the tail, etc., the shape and form, etc. That is actual earth. Now that is a body of a cattle, made up of body matter. And the knowledge is prakasha, the cognition, pratyaya, jnana is always a light effect in the psyche and consciousness. So that's how the three things are there, but there is a mix-up. We are not able to really have distinction. We impose one on the other. That's why there is itaretarādhyāsāt. But there is a samyama for pravibhagam, division, that this is shabda, this is artha, this is pratyaya. And when there is that pravibhagam, the division, and samyama on division, then comes sarva bhuta arut jnanam. So, say for instance, the cow might, the dog might bark. The dog will bark, but the dog will bark for several reasons. It will communicate so many things to its fraternity, which the dogs might understand, but we won't understand. We only say dog is barking. But the dog is trying to communicate something. And the marvelous thing about the living world is to be understood that the animals have their own knowledge. And this knowledge is not there to mankind. Although human knowledge is superior to all of them, yet they have a different knowledge, content, which we are deprived of. And I recall that incident when there was tsunami which hit the Southeast Asia, the Indian eastern coast and eastern coast of Sri Lanka. The man had no clue that there would be tsunami, the coast would be hit by tsunami, but all those forests, the animals had fled from sight well before tsunami. That means they had pre-sight, premonition of what is going to happen. Now this is not there to mankind, despite the observatories, etc., meteorological studies, etc., and other studies about the nature that modern science is carrying out and has, yet they outscore. The dogs are said to be having a premonition of earthquake. Any impending earthquake would be first realized by animals, birds, and dog particularly. It is said that it is able to smell any earthquake beforehand. Now, man should have this advantage of it. So if a man understands dog's language or elephant's language, like elephants fled from the site when the tsunami was to hit. Now, no elephant which was killed or which died in tsunami. So we will be able to get advantage of their knowledge. They communicate. So the lions communicated this to each other, and that's how they evacuated the forests. And they went to safe place, safe zones, and they saved themselves. Mankind could not be saving. Mankind had all kind of loss. So the birds have their knowledge. They have some knowledge which we can't get it. Creatures and insects and worms and animals and cattle have their some special knowledge which is not available to mankind still. So their knowledge, their language, their sound, if it is understood, we will know what are they suggesting, what are they signaling. And in the light of what happened in Southeast Asia, as I told you, he would have had the advantage. The mankind would have had the advantage and would not have faced the loss to the extent mankind faced. So, Sarva Bhuta Ruta Jnanam, the animals and creatures have sounds, that their language is sounds. And with their sounds, they say so many things. And one final example I will give you. When the baby cries, mother will know why the baby is crying. Others won't know. Others will not be able to make it. But mother is able to infer, or mother has knowledge. The child is hungry, therefore cries. So child is having pain, it cries. Ache, it cries. Hungry, it cries. Feeling sleepy, it cries. For everything it will cry. Feeling thirsty, it will cry. The cry will be identical. But the mother is only able to make out that it is thirsty, it is hungry, it is sleepy, or it is having a pain, ache, it is restless, and mother will take care. So mother understands the sound of her child. Others do not understand the sound of that baby. Mother understands. Because the baby is communicating to the mother. And therefore mother knows as to what is the case with the child. Hungry, thirsty, sleepy, restless, some pain, some agony. So that is called śabdāthapratyayānāmam, shabda. So animals have shabda, sounds, and from their sounds they communicate something, they mean something. What do they mean? By such samyama, yogi would be knowing. So he would have the advantage of what the animals are communicating. If it is of some use, yogi will be able to use it. So that is sarva bhuta ruta jnanam. Okay.
So now in this context, the Bhashya will give us a lot of knowledge of the Siddhanta of the Shabda. And in the Indian tradition, the whole concept of Shabda is a very deep subject to which a lot of different Shastrakara, seers are given thought. Because essentially, the Vedas are Shabda Swarupa. So there is this notion of Shabda Brahma. In fact, the Vedas are said to be apaurushaya. It is not composed by anyone. There are no author. Not even the Lord has composed it. So most of the darshanas. Vedas have always been there. They come with the creation. And with every cycle of creation, the Paramatma instructs the Vedas to Brahma, it is said, who then establishes it. So then the Paramatma is said to be not the Karta but the Upadeshta. Okay? So in some of the schools the Karta is also accepted. But the Shabda Prapancha is of highly regarded and highly investigated. In fact, the Purva Mimamsa school, there is a lot of discussion on what is a Shabda and how to define it. Is it eternal? Is it non-eternal? So Nitya, Nitya, etc. There is a vada around that. Then there is the Paninian school or the Vyakarana Darshana, where also the Shabda and its position, etc. is discussed. And as we know, Patanjali has also written the Bhashya, the Mahabhashya on the Panini Sutras. So this whole topic of Shabda is a very deep subject which is discussed in great detail in different texts. Bhartrihari has a text called Vakyapadiyam, which also deeply touches on this aspect. So here in this Bhashya, we get a glimpse of that because that is mentioned as a Sanyama, topic for Sanyama. We fortunately get a glimpse of that Siddhanta in the Bhashya that Vyasa provides on this sutra. So just to begin, Vyasa starts by trying to establish what is Shabda. So he says, Tatra Vak Varneshu Eva Arthavati. So here it is also discussing whether Vak is Shabda. But here Vyasa says Vak varneshu eva arthavati. So the purpose of vak is the speech or the power of speech, the concept of speech. So the speech achieves its purpose in the utterance of the letters or the syllables. So that is what is said here. Tatra arthavati means attaining its purpose. So vak varneshu eva arthavati. By uttering the sounds, uttering the syllables, the purpose of vak, of speech, is attained, accomplished. Okay. So what about hearing? What about shrotra? It says shrotram cha dhani pariṇāmamatra vishayam. So what is shrotram? It is that which is able to recognize the changes in sound, the changes in dhani, that is dhani pariṇāma, the modifications of sound. That is all, that is the vishaya, the object of the sense. So shrotram cha dhani pariṇāma matra vishayam. So that goes to say that neither vak in itself or shrotra by itself are shabda. One is varneshu eva arthavati, the uttering of the syllables, there the purpose is accomplished. And in the other case, the hearing the modification of sounds or recognizing the modification of sounds, that is what shrotra is about. So then what? Padam punaha nadana samhara buddhi nigrayam iti. So the padam is a term, like a word. Now the padam also, there is a slight difference in how the Nyaya Shastra would define it and how the Vyakarana Shastra would define it. But in any case, we can take the padam as a word of Sanskrit. Now the Panini says suptingantam padam. So which we will have to, we cannot go into details of that here because those are some of the grammatical terms. So the word is, here Vyasa says padam punaha. Okay, this padam, what is it? Nadanu samhara buddhi nigrayam iti. So all the sounds taken together, making it one. So the sounds have come, selecting those sounds, making it one, then having the buddhi grasp it together. The thing that can be done in that way, that is the padam, that is the word. So the speech has uttered certain varnas. Varnas are individual syllables or letters of syllables. The shrotram, the hearing, identifies those modifications in sound. But the padam happens when the sequence of sounds is selected, taken together as one, and grasped by the buddhi as one unit. When that happens, that is padam, says Vyasa. Padam punaha nadanu sammara buddhi nirgrayam. Nadanu sammara means all the sounds are collected, taken together as one, and in the buddhi it is grasped as one unit. That is known as padam. So here, very quickly, we see what the Vyasa tells us about vak, its role, the speech and its role, shrotram, its role, and then what really constitutes a padam or a word. Okay. Now, varnaha eka samaya sambhavitatvat paraspara niranugrahatmanaha. So now, okay, these letters or sounds are taken as one, and then we identify the buddhi grasps it as one word. Now, Vyasa talks about those letters and syllables themselves, varnaha. What about them? Eka samaya asambhavitatvat. Because the varnas are not all present at the same time. The one varna is uttered, then the next letter is uttered, then the next letter is uttered. So by the time the second comes, the first one has gone away. By the time the third comes, the second one has gone away. So they are all not present together in time. So that is eka samaya asambhavitvam. So now because of that, eka samaya asambhavitvatvat paraspara niranugrahatmanaha. So they are not leaving imprints on each other. They are not gracing each other, or they are not having effects on each other. So each varna comes and goes on its own, and there is no effect that is going across the varnas. Then te padam asamsprushya anupasthapya आविर्भूताः तिरोभूताश्चेति pratyekam apadasvarupa uchyante. So because they are not all together at the same time, they are not having effects on each other because they are coming in sequence. So they padam asamsprushya. So they are not touching the state of becoming a meaningful word. A letter is a letter. So they are not touching the state of a being. So padam asamsprushya. Not touching the state of being a meaningful word. Anupasthapya. So they are not able to, each letter itself is not able to establish the word. So asamsprushya anupasthapya avirbhutaha tirobhutaha. They emerge and go away. Each letter comes and goes. It emerges and fades away. So avirbhutaha tirobhutascheti pratyekam, each of those apadasvarupaha. So each varna by itself is not padasvarupa. It is not not of the nature of the word, not of the nature of the padam. So pratyekam apadasvarupaha uchyante. But at the same time, so now while this is true, another interesting way of looking at it is given. Varnaha punaha ekaikaha padatma sarvabhidana shakti prachitaha सहकारी वर्णांतर प्रतियोगित्वात् वैश्वरूप्यम इव आपन्नः. But at the same time, while each letter or each syllable does not touch the state of being a padam or a meaningful word, and therefore they are decided to be apadasvarupa. A varna is apadasvarupa. It is not of a padasvarupa. It is not of the meaningful word. That is what the first sentence said. However, now it says varnaha punaha ekaikaha padatma. At the same time, each varna is a padatma because it resides in the pada resides in it. The pada is incomplete without that varna. Furthermore, sarva vidana shakti prachitaha. Each varna has the power to denote everything because there is a potential of several words that include that varna or that letter. So then how does it operate? Sahakari varnantara pratiyogitvat. Because each letter in itself has the power to manifest several words by having the sahakari varna, the adjacent letters coming before and after it to form several possible words. So sahakari varnantara pratiyogitvat Vaishvarupyam iva. So each letter itself, it gets a certain nanatvam. Each word has a Vaishvarupyam. It is able to manifest several words because it can be a constituent of several words by having the right set of sahakari varnas, the right set of letters next to it. By combining with the right set of letters, it can manifest several words. So Vaishvarupyam iva, it gets almost a universal form. Each letter gets a universal form. Vaishvarupyam iva apannaha. Purvascha uttarascha purvena visheshe avasthapita iti. So each previous letter with this next one and each next letter with the previous one, what do? Visheshe avasthapita iti. They give rise to a distinct word and meaning, a distinct padaspota, a distinct effect on the buddhi. So therefore, here we are learning more and more of the science of Shabda. What is Vak? We heard what is Shrotram, what is Padam. Now we are sort of dwelling on the question of, is Varna itself the word? Is each letter itself a word? The first part says no, it isn't, because each of them come and fade away. Therefore, they don't even touch the state of being a word. Then, while that is true, there is another aspect that needs to be noticed and recognized, where each Varna has sort of a universal power, a universal presence, a universal Vaishvarupyam, because by combining with a distinct set of specific letters, they can manifest so many words. And therefore, it was said, Varnaha punaha ekaikaha padatma sarvavidana shakti prachitaha sahakari varnantara pratiyogitvat vaishvarupyam iva apannaha. So, and then purvascha uttarena. So, how does that operate? By each letter combining with a certain previous one and certain next one, it can bring about this whole a specific meaning. Each combination can bring a specific padaspota, a specific understanding, or a specific word. In another text, it is elaborated as Varnanam tu yogapadya asambhavaha atah parasparam anugrahakatvad anugrahakatva yogat sambhuyapi narthadiyam adhatte. So the thing to understand here is, each letter has the potential to bring about several words, but at the same time, each letter, because by itself it does not manifest a word and a meaning, it does not get the status of a padam. Okay? So just like in Dharma Lakshana Avastha Parinama, there were several Siddhantic aspects, academic aspects that were elaborated. Here we are learning or going through several academic questions around the whole topic of Shabda. What is a Shabda? How does it come about? Etc. So we will have to continue this in the next session.
So, if I may say so, relevant Shabdanuशाsanam is appearing in the text here, relevant to the topic that we are discussing. And therefore, you just now heard Vyasa's the commentary, the part here, Tatra Vaka Varneshu Eva Arthavati. So, this is Shabdanuशाsanam, Shabda. And Shabda has really attained enormous importance in spiritual wisdom, called Shabda Brahma by itself. So, the organ of speech, it only takes recourse to Varna, the phonics, literal, the phonic sound forms. And with that, it is able to present an object by itself, like uttering the word cow. So there are varnas which are coming together to form a word cow, and then you get the very meaning of it, and you get something about cow vishay jnanam. So it can explore the knowledge about a cattle or cow. Rose, it's just a word, but then it will explore the whole knowledge about a flower called rose. So the role of organ of speech is to be understood in Shabda Brahma. And the other organ is Shrotram, Dhvani pariṇāmatraya vishayam. It only takes the sound form of it. So the oral organ will utter the sound, auditory organ will hear the sound. And then the buddhi will try to understand the whole word, the concept, the notion, the idea. That becomes its object. And therefore we get the knowledge process by Shabda. The Shabda is a very important instrument, component, agency of knowledge. Without words, imagine a knowledge. So, what the mouth does, oratory organ, what the ear does, and what the buddhi does. The three together produce what we call as verbal knowledge or the basic knowledge. Now, when using example can be given here. If I utter a word tomorrow, so by uttering word tomorrow, you know the reference is to the following day. But if you phonically look at it, if I just say two, and after a couple of moments or minutes, if I say ma, and another couple of minutes I say ro, you will not get the idea of tomorrow. So these phonics, tu, ma, ro, have to come in quick succession. Then you get the word, and then you get the meaning of it. Now the tu is not giving rise to ma, and the ma is not giving rise to ro, and there is no relationship also. But in our oratory act, when we use the words and utter word tomorrow, it must be uttered in a particular pace. Otherwise, you will not be able to construe the meaning of it. So the previous sound form goes away, and the next sound form comes. That sound goes away, and next sound. There are three phonics here, sound forms here, tu, ma, ro. So tu has to go away, and then the ma comes. So tu is not the cause of ma. The ma goes away, and the ro comes. The ma is not the cause of ro, because the ma is gone, and then comes ro. So this wonderful the idea about language which comes in Vyakarana Shastra, that gets some accommodation here to understand padadñānam, padasputam. So if I have to say tomorrow, I have to say tomorrow that phonics must come in quick succession and not with a pause. Because tu can give rise to ma, tu can also give rise to ge, and it can become together. The word can become together. So several words can come. So the previous word is not a parental body to subsequent word, phonic form. So some aspects of Vyakarana Shastra have been brought to light here. And you will really later understand how it is related to Sarva Bhuta Ruta Jnanam. Because it is all depending upon sound. Animals make sound. Now, if the same sound is made, you put on a sound machine and made you to hear that in slow motion, you won't understand ABC of it when it is slow motion. Like human speech, if it is put in very slow motion, sound machine, you won't hear anything. You won't get any knowledge out of it. In normal motion, if you hear, you know that something is spoken and what is spoken. But if it is put in slow motion, if you put your tape recorder in slow motion, sound machine in slow motion, the sound will be there. So, wonderful aspect has come here to explain padasphota. The previous letter is not parental to the following letter. But when it is coming in close succession, immediately following, then the things become meaningful. Now, my utterance to tomorrow, if it is recorded and you put on the sound machine in a slow motion, you won't get the idea of tomorrow or what the meaning of it even. You won't get any meaning of it. So, Vyakarana Shastra deals with padaspota, vakyaspota, etc. So, this is all important in śabdārthapratyayānāmam. So, beautiful part of it that has commenced here. So, śabdānuśāsanam relevant here has come. Anyway, finally, let me tell you that you can cite the literature that is available in English language. prolific, infinite literature is available in various realms of sciences and subjects. But basically, there are only 26 alphabets. By arranging 26 alphabets in various ways, you get so many words. So many words are turned out. Basically, there are only 26 alphabets. But if you try to take a view of the literature available based on only 26 alphabets, enormous, infinite literature has come out and can come out in various subjects, various realms. But everything is based on 26 alphabets. So what 26 alphabets can do can be imagined. That so many sciences can be articulated, so many subjects can be articulated. An enormous realm of knowledge is opened out, which is sourced in only 26 basic alphabets, literal letters. So that's why it's a marvel. Shabda is a marvel. Therefore, we have the concept of Shabda Brahma. Okay.
Okay, so we'll stop for today and continue this bhasha in the next session. Let us recite the shlokas on Guruji. Vaijñānikam pravaktrutva asaneshu kalavidam yogaabhyase cha tattvajñam vandeham sundaram gurum yogaruksho hi lokesmin yat preranena varditah yogacharya guru tubhyam sundaraya namo namaha. Thank you.
Namaskar, all of you.